Hi, you guys. This is Richard Sachs. I'm your host on Lost Arts Radio. Hope you've had a good week, and we're bringing you another super great guest on this Sunday show for you. And this is back to our original interest of geoengineering. And the reason I say geoengineering is before we started Lost Arts Radio, the way that all came about is that I was originally a co-host on a geoengineering radio broadcast every week, and that lasted a few months, and then I was done with that, and then we started Lost Arts Radio subsequently, and have never lost the interest in geoengineering. And it was from Russ Tanner's geoengineering Facebook group that we found Doug and made the whole program possible. So we've kept that interest. I always watch many of those groups and organizations, but one of them I didn't know about was run by Raphaelle O'Neill in New Orleans. And the way I found out about it indirectly was her new book, Funny Clouds, a Chemtrail Tale, a kid's book on chemtrails, which I thought was a great idea. It was very recently, so I haven't even had time to read it yet, so we'll have to ask Raphaelle all about it. But she's also the creator of weathertruth.org and NOLA Butterfly on YouTube. She's on other social media platforms, and we'll get to hear about that too. But mainly I'd like to get beginning by hearing about her work and how she got started in it, and how she developed this focus and interest, and see what she's doing now and what's coming next, and how you can get the book and follow her, things like that. So welcome, Raphaelle. I'm really glad you're here, and
I am honored and delighted
about what you're doing.
Thank you for the fabulous intro. And yes, this is 10 years. This is 9 years ago now. If you would have told me that this would be conversations I would be having, I would not even be able to fathom what you were talking about.
Right.
I've always been a liberty lover and spirited fighter of the system, and knowing that it's corrupt. But I had issues with health and immune system, and realizing that the standard American diet was failing me, and realizing that the medical system didn't know what they were doing, and I had to navigate my own way through an illness that disabled me, and I had my body attacking my feet. And it was connected to the foods and my immune system. So I was aware of a connection to my environment, and I was here for Katrina, the hurricane in New Orleans, and survived the aftermath, which was even greater than the hurricane itself. For some people, there was surviving the flood.
Right.
A lot of trauma afterwards, the years afterwards, and the rebuilding of the communities when everybody else forgets about it. And I'm gonna tell you what, we really did a great job of coming together, because we have a great community, and we won the Super Bowl in 2010, and that was like the signaling the end of the morning of Katrina for the city. We really rejoiced. We were on top of the world. And then 4 months later, or 2 months later, we have the BP oil spill.
2 months later, you had what? I couldn't hear you.
The BP oil spill.
Oh yeah, okay.
That was a slow nightmare unfolding, and it just felt like my narrative was always like way quicker than whatever the narrative of mainstream media was. Like, why are we going to use Corexit, the dispersant? Why are we doing this? Why is the response so slow? Why is nobody realizing why they're getting cancer around here?
And maybe you were wondering why they were spraying Corexit over the land as well as the water too.
Well, and there was that we had a massage therapist who passed away, caught in the breeze of that. Then they also brought in sand to cover up the oil in some areas. I mean, we just got to have a front row seat to an apocalypse, which was hyper-localized. But for me, it was devastating, because I used to live off of the seafood and the local fare and the way of life and the fishermen. It was just such a great sovereign way of life for rugged, less than perfect people, like, the rough and the diamonds in the rough, and with a great love of life. And I just enjoyed life here. And so it was very heartbreaking to see us have to go through such a traumatic loss to our way of life. I stopped eating the fish locally. I was having environmental reactions, even in New Orleans, from the winds coming in from the Corexit. It was just not the same. And it drove me insane. And I saw a movie called What in the World Are They Spraying? And I thought it was about Corexit. And And that day, through the greater providence of things, greater wheels in the cosmos that were working, after I saw that movie, I walked my dog and I looked up, and there was the biggest display of contrail pollution taking over the sky, turning blue sky, a perfectly sunshiny day. I saw it turn to gray haze in front of my eyes.
Right.
And I didn't know how I could never saw that before. And I paid attention every day afterwards. And not for 2 months did I see anything of that level. There might have been a few contrails, but that full out, they're different effects. They're not all the same effects. They're not all the same intention. And I've learned since then. I've spoken with people who have photographed these chemtrails in the 80s. I've heard things about how they'll spray one chemical and then they'll come and spray another chemical. They'll mix in the air and do a third effect. And how they'll thread the program through the airline, traffic, they play on plausible deniability. Now, they might have gotten slack in some areas because they think they're great gods and they can get away with it. But generally speaking, they also have to make it plausible to the scientists, because it's not a big conspiracy that all the scientists are in on. They're working plausible deniability in with the science. And having written the children's chemtrail book, I took on 7 bad reviews before I sold a single book. So I had a lot of attention and a lot of people trying to take me on. Now think about that.
It's amazing you were getting psychic customers who could tell without reading it what it was like.
Exactly. And then it ended up being like, I got more reviews. You think I'm a millionaire by the reviews. It was like a war. Finally, the believers outweigh the unbelievers and the trolls.
Right.
But I had to dive into the science because I was told I didn't deserve to have kids. I deserved to be shot. I deserved a lot of things for daring to pollute the minds of innocent children. So and there's more to that story, but we don't have to dive into that because there's so much to cover. And it's led to other discoveries that are even greater than, hey, this chick's got a chemtrail book for children, which is actually a great tool for activists, because people realize, wait a minute, for children can handle this. I found a way to cook it down. And there's actually a beautiful message that parallels anti-GMOs and how, men are trying to control everything, the air, the food, the water, even us, everything that walks, crawls, swims, so it can be seen. I actually released a reading of the book so you can read it, but I recommend you buy it because you can donate it to a library. You can have it in your display.
Yeah.
They're a great little souvenir of the apocalypse. I mean, what can I say? But they also help fund greater research on our end here, because we've been trying to, at first I didn't want to even look at the CO2 narrative. I said, well, if you believe CO2 is a problem in global warming, you're going to think that a cloud should be insignificant too, right? And pollution from contrails. But I was stuck in a linguistic game that wasn't helping me advance my activism when I went to a meteorologist. And I ended up learning that there were some things that we were repeating in the chemtrail community that just were not true. And while it's effective in getting people's attention, when we went up to the scientific community, we didn't have any weight because we didn't know what we were talking about. And so simply adjusting a little bit of the narrative doesn't debunk the chemtrails, actually helps bring it further. So maybe I'll just share here the video that I put together to help show you where our work has gone. There's a lot more to how this came together. I do have a documentary documentary series called World of Hot Water.
Okay.
That is telling the story from, in a concise way about where this is all leading us to. But I've discovered that that a lot of a secret, $1 billion secret, that people who believe in chemtrails, people who believe CO2 is the problem, and people who deny it all are missing from their narrative. And this secret is the key to understanding a larger element of the climate hacking world weaponized weather system we are in today, because chemtrails is just a part of it. It has multiple aspects. It is a necessary part of it. It is a devastating part of it, but it is not even the most crucial part of it at this point.
Okay. Can I ask you one question before you keep going with that? You mentioned this documentary series that you've got, World of Hot Water, but in case people want to see it, you didn't mention where to see it.
Sure. All that can be found. I am NOLA Butterfly. NOLA stands for New Orleans, Louisiana. butterfly, because before I started this work, I was just fluttering around, enjoying my life. And then I just got curious, started asking questions, and started. So you can go back as far as you want, but my work gets more concise as you go up. And the World of Hot Water documentary series is a work in progress on NOLA Butterfly YouTube, and it is still unrolling. So we have a lot. We are going to, I can get more into what we will be unveiling. But first, I would like to just make a concise introduction to her.
Yeah, that's good. So for that, they can just go, though, to your YouTube channel and look at under videos, and it's all there, right?
Sure. And if I'm ever down on YouTube, BitChute has me, and 153news.net has me. And looking to diversify as much as I can.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption. I just
Sure, no, I appreciate that. We want to be able to follow the details. And anything I say, even if in passing, I can spend an hour talking to you and proving.
Yeah.
So just so you know, I'm willing to back it up. So if I condense a lot of information, no, it's in the interest of, I'm showing you the forest. And then later on, we can examine what kind of trees we have there.
Okay.
So if, without further ado, this is the exciting part for me. I never tire of it. And, you know, for me, this is very exciting. And I invite everybody to basically debunk what they can. But what ends up happening is that light bulbs go off in this work, and people end up coming with more pieces to the puzzle. So I'm going to move this out of our way here. And do I need to make this bigger? Here we go. Everyone, more or less, has heard of chemtrails by now, though some are still lacking knowledge of the fact that we have proven they exist and are stuck focusing just on CO2. The others who know are busy focusing on aerosols, which indeed are a significant part of the climate and environmental problems we collectively face. Airplane contrails cause geoengineering, but because the linguistic game states that geoengineering has to be deliberate to be geoengineering, it is alleged not to count. That is a fallacy, not just because aerosols are bad, but because there is a way more significant greenhouse gas that has been kept from the public consciousness, despite being a basic scientific fact. The matter of fact is that water vapor, and not CO2, is the way more prominent greenhouse gas, but we ignore this because allegedly we have no way of affecting this. There is no anthropogenic effect, no man-made effect that we can have on that water vapor. Well, once we realize the significance of the contrail narrative, NASA says even small changes in the location or abundance of clouds could change the climate. Not the weather, but the climate, more than the anticipated changes brought about by greenhouse gases, human-produced aerosols, or other factors associated with global change. NASA. So once we realize the significance of this, not only will paying attention to weather effects from contrails, deliberate or accidental, or power plant releases, that will all become more relevant in explaining local 1,000-year floods, but also will make the other things that affect water vapor way more relevant to the conversation of global and local climate change. And what is that, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys? What affects dipole water molecules? Microwaves. Now, we all know about HAARP here, right? But how many of us have realized that HAARP cannot manage the weather globally? Even with a few atmospheric heaters, we are seeing a very localized effect on weather. We have discovered that what manages the weather locally is none other than the very same technology that the meteorologists use to read the weather. Doppler radar, the nationwide water vapor evaporator and intensifier, hacking our hydrological cycle on a daily basis, steering our weather and storms, leaving us in a world of hot water today.
What is this technology? Essentially, we're drawing oceanic rain systems that exist over the oceans into geographic targets, into our agricultural areas. The technology uses electromagnetics, so we're not interfering with the atmosphere or with the environment. We're not damaging it. We're not using chemicals fired through rockets like other technologies use. We use a very gentle but powerful technology launching electromagnetics into the atmosphere to modify the flow of the weather system over the ocean and drawing it into a target. So to try and keep it simple, we established some kind of link with a weather system, and once we've seen through satellite meteorology that we have that link, we're able to draw that system in incrementally towards the target, such as in this case, the Horn of Africa.
So let's take this one as a case study. This is April 20th through the 21st of 2012. This was a visual that they showed on the website. And this is an example of their composite map, and I thought it was a great example to use because here you can actually see you have a front coming through, and then the Doppler radars build a wall. They bloom out, stopping it from continuing on, and it sends it up instead. So it's coming across, but the blooms come, and then it breaks it up and sends it out. And this is even illustrated really well on the slower one here. See this Doppler turns that, takes that line of weather, and because it's here, and it goes like that, goes around it, like it splits it up like it's a Laffy Taffy being pulled on a line of conveyor belts.
Yeah.
So the Doppler can turn one way, and then it moves the wind spread ball is a piece of energy coming through, and the Doppler will. Coming in, coming in, coming in, bloom, separate, split. Over here too, you can see there's some weather coming in, and it blooms, breaking it up. Sometimes it's not strong enough to get rid of it altogether, but it kind of desiccates it, like a desiccated cell or something. It loses its fullness. I could tell when they're raising the, I mean, these create low and high pressure fronts. I don't know about a front, but high and low pressure areas. So this is low pressure, 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 high pressure. Low pressure, low pressure, low pressure. Low pressure, low pressure, low pressure, high pressure.
So yeah, you want to be careful with the false sustainability narrative because now they're rolling out 5G and calling it sustainable. And we could see microwaves are not sustainable when you see the effect it has on weathers. And actually, what we're seeing with 5G is that it's actually working to further hyper-localize our weather. And a really good example of that was what happened in Mexico with the hail. I don't know if you've seen that or if we want to look at a video of that, but it was hail that was just 5 feet of hail that like took over the cars like a river. Semi-trucks were completely, cars were like lifted up, like facing down. I think there was military looking for bodies, but there was nothing on the sidewalk.
What time of the year was this and where?
This was in June this year. Let me just take a minute and to find it here real quick, and I'll share my screen again with you. Okay, so here we go. This was in June of this year, right before Barry. And we're going to give credit to Jamie Lee of Plain Truth Info.info. So here, and also that's incredible channel for the footage or the narration.
Where is this located?
Houses as
Guadalajara.
in the streets, not so much on the sidewalk as in the streets for a few block radius.
Wow.
Not more, not less. Where is all the hail, and how come it's so concentrated underneath the LED lights and the black wires, like Jamie Lee was so kind to break down for us?
See, folks, see the hailstorm on top of the roofs here?
Are you seeing the roofs covered with the hail? Well, there's one with the roof, but there's not. And this roof collapsed for some reason. But where's all of this hailstorm or whatever they're calling it? How come it's not on the roofs? And then there's certain streets over here, as we're going to see in a minute too. And you see over in this building, the picture over, you see over this building down here in the lower corner, has none. But you can see how it's solid it gets. And the solidity of how fast it sets up. I mean, this is what we used to call Sierra cement up in Lake Tahoe when it would come in the later seasons, and then it would just solidify. But look over here, people. There's no snow over here. They're standing on the street. The snow only came on the streets, and I'll get to why that is in a minute. Looks like down here they're looking for bodies and whatnot. Nobody died from this. But it just stopped the cars in their place. Look up here. Look at this picture up on top up here, up in this area. The cars are fine. There's no hail. There's no whatever they're calling it. It's not snow. This was a geoengineered event. Look at the cars. They're completely fine. There's dirt over there. So it was an isolated event just on the roads. Look at the sidewalk. Look at the people walking on the sidewalk. They didn't have snowplows come and push it. And look at these cars. This was like a river of hailstorm, and then down here is completely clear. Completely geoengineered event. These pictures are absolutely incredible, showing what's happened here. So how did this happen? Why did this happen? What is going on here? Well, I posted the other day, titled The Most Important Video You'll Ever Watch, and what I want you to focus on is this right up in here. Let me just zoom it in a little bit. And you know what it is? It's the LED lights. This is what we're learning now. These LED lights are weaponized. Robert Steele has talked about it on 5G, that it's weaponized the weather lights. And here's what I think happened. This guy's standing. There's no hail or snow on top of this roof here. It was an isolated event. Again, you see it on the sidewalks. They're standing on the sidewalks while the snow's in the middle of the road. Well, I've talked before about dark fiber. I've talked about the 5G energy that they're burying underground. And then these light poles would create the frequency of that. And all they have to do is ionize it and put some weather in there, and they can microclimate anywhere they want. And this is what I think happened. I think they microclimated using the LED lights. And these LED lights combined with the lower frequencies down underneath the ground, and they created this weather event. And they microclimatated it, whatever the word is. It was done in very, very micro units, and they can do it anywhere they want, as we saw in Texas, as we saw in Japan, as we saw in the heat waves. These are all geoengineered events that have been perfected now over 40 years. In my book, Geoengineering Investigations into Humanity's Sixth Great Extinction Event, in the back of the book, in the appendix, I show over 40 years of weather modification patents. They've been doing this for a very, very long time, and now they're using nanotechnology.
I mean, look at that. And so in New Orleans, right before Barry, there was a storm that was, there was flooding before the storm. And they didn't know why. We had flooding in parts of the city. We never had flooding before.
Only God knows that. I don't know.
Sure. You made a great point, though. A lot of people have been telling us this morning the areas that they're seeing flood or where they live, they've never seen flood, not even in Katrina. And this is something we've heard over the past 2 years in several flooding incidents. And this is one of those things. How do people feel reassured living in New Orleans?
You know, at the end of the day, we know the problem that we have, and we have to work to rectify that problem. It should not get worse before it gets better. Areas that have not flooded in decades should not begin to flood now. And we're going to have some serious questions for the Sewage and Water Board and DPW, just so we can understand why this is happening.
Okay, so you see, they don't know what's going on, right? But the thing is, here was a just got word from a Sewage and Water Board operator. They're not allowed to turn on pumps in New Orleans and not being told why. Welcome to Isaacson's Island. So, yeah, they're deliberately leaving the pumps to fail, and it makes you wonder. And I came and I told them about 5G. I also told them that I thought the sewage. This is at City Council in New Orleans, because when I heard 5G was coming to New Orleans, understanding what I did about Doppler radar and having lived by a cell phone tower for 5 years, I knew that I I was sensitive to it. It was killing me. I had to move away from a cell phone tower, and I definitely didn't want 5G bringing a cell phone tower to my neck of the woods where I finally moved out away from a cell phone tower. I can't do Wi-Fi. I do hardwired internet. Anyways, first time City Council hears of microwaves' effect on weather. I asked, they offered us a health panel, which they never which they never gave us, actually. But
we have one comment card from Raphaelle O'Neill regarding fiber optics. And so would you like to speak to that, or would you like to speak to the final agenda?
Oh, well, I'd like to speak to both. I can have two cards, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First of all, Brian Snyder, thank you for the fiber optics talk. I'm for fiber optics. I want more fiber optics, and I realize it would be wise with your 5G to have a grid installed that's uniform. I want more fiber optics, less 5G. And on this, I'm going to take a minute to have a 2-minute weather modification, weather history, weather climate talk. The most prominent greenhouse gas on Earth is not CO2. It is not methane. It is water vapor. This is a scientific fact. 90% of the greenhouse gases is water vapor. And we don't consider this in the climate change sustainable narrative because supposedly we do not affect water vapor. And that is not the case when you look at microwaves. Now we have HAARP, which is an ionospheric heater in Alaska, which the Air Force said they use to manage the atmosphere. We have Russia and China doing controversial heating atmospheres of the atmosphere using microwaves. They're doing heating atmospheres. Doppler radar is having a love affair with the storms. The storms keep going into Doppler radar. This is work that I've done, NOLA Butterfly, YouTube, World of Hot Water. See the documentary series and see the scientific evidence for it. I'm laying out 6 more shows before I send it to 1,000 meteorologists. I've talked to Margaret Orr. I've talked to the American Meteorological Society Conference. I've talked to the National Weather Service. I know my stuff, and this needs to be on the table if you're talking about sustainable, because irradiating humanity.
30 more seconds on this item.
Irradiating humanity. Boy, I'm so glad I get the same time to be gracefully talk about my stuff. So anyways, we have also, now the NOAA is worried that 5G is going to interfere with 25 years of weather prediction because it's going to interfere with the water vapor signal. So we need to consider water vapor and microwaves. Okay, that's what I'm going to say on that. But for fiber optics, it's great. It's great.
And Ms. O'Neill, you can stay right there.
Oh,
you're our only
another one. Okay.
public comment card on motion M19.
Okay.
And that is a month-to-month extension on the contract of Shulman, Rogers, Gandel, and Porty.
Sure. And I wasn't sure I was going to come today because
just 1 second. Let me just move adoption. And I don't want your time to start and stop. You get your full 2 minutes. As soon as I would move adoption, and it's seconded by Council President Moreno. You have your floor.
Okay, so despite today being the global 5G protest day around the world, I wasn't going to come because, well, I was bailing out the water from the flooding and the failed pumps, but we can't manage the sewage and water board, yet we're going to manage the radiation blanket across the city. Complaints have started coming in, and the reason I'm here today is because they installed smart meters in my neighborhood on Friday, and ever since, I have not been able to sleep. I've broken up.
Miss O'Neill, this is on a...
This is about smart and sustainable. I'm providing information.
This is on the...
Because I've also asked you for 6 months to provide a health
Miss O'Neill, just one moment.
This is information.
Just 1 moment. We're stopping your time.
Okay, thank you.
This agenda item is on a month-to-month extension of a contract for Shulman, Rogers, Gandel, and Porty.
Okay.
Do you wish to comment on that?
This is about infrastructure for 5G?
No, this is about a month-to-month extension for a contract for Shulman,
And what do
Rogers,
they do? Are they sustainable related? Sustainability related?
No, they are legal counsel for matters involving the FCC.
Okay, well, I would love to talk to them because neither the FCC nor you could provide a single study that proved 5G was safe for humanity, and we asked you to, and that was a sham health panel. And everyone in New Orleans has seen what went on here as a kangaroo court that was promised as a health panel but then had industry bias, despite we're still looking for one study that proves 5G is safe for humanity. So good luck with everything else you're voting on. Good luck fighting global warming with a wrong narrative and with all this gatekeeping. Good luck. Because we're all in this together.
So anyway, that's a little bit of tying in some of the way it all ties in, you know, and meeting the New World Order where the rubber meets the road in your city council meeting and letting them know this is not sustainable. We're on the wrong track with this. Microwaves. We're cooking humanity. We're cooking the atmosphere. Don't tell me it's for global warming. And I'm making a video showing how the sustainability is actually intended to ignore pollution. The Green New Deal is actually really a dangerous thing because it's gathering the power and energy and harnessing all the wishes of all the activists, the anti-frackers, the stop cancer rally, the you stop this, stop that, and saying, give us your power, vote for the Green New Deal, and we'll make choices that will trickle down. And no, we're not really going to promise anything to the frackers. We're not really going to promise anything to this Clean Our Waters group, but there'll be a trickle-down effect. Just trust us and give us your power. So that's also the problem I have with QAnon. Anything that asks you to trust the plan. No, the time of action is now. The time of accountability is now. And unfortunately, I'm working on so many projects. I move chess pieces one piece at a time, but I'm moving 100 pieces at one time as this one woman army. But I represent a lot of people, and I have people helping me in different capacities, and we get information from each other. And the more I roll out this World of Hot Water documentary series, the more light bulbs go off and the more people have things to contribute. And I'm just the child saying the emperor wears no clothes. When you look at the narrative and you go up to the walls of it, there is $1 billion secret. If you Google greenhouse gas chart and you look at the image results, you will not see water vapor listed. They only show you in 100 search results, it'll be the anthropogenic greenhouse gas list, and it won't show water vapor. So people don't realize that water vapor is significant. And NASA says it's the most significant. And so there's different ways. There's cloud aerosol interaction is very important, but really they don't need to put a single aerosol out. I mean, I don't know what they need exactly, but they can, once they got enough, they evaporate. They bloom out these Doppler radars and they evaporate the water, and it's just different pulses of Dopplers that can create high pressure or low pressure depending on the blooms, and then the beams go out and they feed the water, goes into it, and we have decades of data. This has been going on for a while, and so my question was, when did this start?
Well, the other thing, Raphaelle, that might be good to clarify is, you know, just to kind of focus in on one point at a time.
Sure.
You said that Doppler radar steers storms.
Yes.
And I think Doppler radar is the same as NEXRAD stations, right?
Yes, they are. They're what the meteorologists use to bring you the weather daily. They're like, the Doppler radar says, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's where people have heard about it, is that it's helping to make wonderful weather forecasts, and much more advanced than in the past when people had to look at the weather and see what it was doing. So,
and this is why a lot of the meteorologists are scratching their heads and saying, what's going on now?
All right. So how did you begin to see that Doppler radar was steering weather? And if it's steering storms, how do you think it's doing it? What did you find out about the mechanism?
So it's been a journey. Just as a chemtrail activist, I was invited to start my own podcast called Beyond the Veil. So we explored climate and social engineering freely without gatekeeping. And I looked at all the chemtrail talking heads. If you were a big shot in the chemtrail community or weather war community, I went up and I saw what you were about. So I got a grasp on the nuance of everybody's narrative. Oh, this guy goes here, but he won't go there. This guy goes there, but this fights with this guy on this.
There's a lot of fighting and argument between the groups, that's for sure.
Fortunately, and I believe that some of that is orchestrated. And I'm not going to go into naming names, but I actually went up to Weather War 101 because of all the people who were talking about what's going on. The one that had the most relevance to my day-to-day weather and the floodings that we were seeing that could pinpoint it better than anybody else was Weather War 101.
That's a website too, right?
It's a website. He has years of maybe a decade of documenting these things, and he highlights power plants a lot, and then Doppler doing tornadoes. And, you know, you had Dutch Sense talking about harp rings, and now I think he also talks about Doppler, but it's very obscured somehow. People don't get the significance of this. Now, what I learned is that no matter what, even if you want to prove a chemtrail, unless you're at the tank looking at the exhaust and what's in the jet fuel, once the jet fuel is out in the air, it's now contaminated by the rest of the air, and so you have a hard time proving, if you can prove which chemical came out of which plane.
Well, and that's if it has anything to do with jet fuel, because there are retrofitted nozzles.
I agree.
That have been focused very closely and clearly, and it shows solids billowing out.
Absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
and so they do know that part. It does.
Right.
There's a
But
lot
the
of people
problem
that are
is that
saying
you-
it only comes from the tanks
Right.
in the fuel, but that's clearly not always.
Oh yeah, and we have pictures too that I'm satisfied to that end. I don't disagree, but again, I tell you, I wrote a series of articles, a 4-part series of articles called "Contrails Matter: Reframing the Chemtrail Narrative." So the thing that I go is, I'm not denying any of these things. I'm just saying, at the end of the day, you can't prove which chemical goes to which plane.
Yeah, that's really hard. Since you brought up the two terms, why don't you define the two, contrails and chemtrails, and what's the difference?
Okay, well, here's the thing. When you look at the science, all contrails are chemtrails, because they form on not just atmospheric aerosols, nuclei, a condensation nuclei, which are small pieces of dust that can create clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And ice supersaturated regions can form nuclei, and contrails can form ice supersaturated regions scientifically, legitimately. So therein you're arguing against science if you say that the contrails can't form an ice supersaturation. But what causes the ice supersaturation? That we can talk about. That's the contrails themselves.
As much definition as we can put in, the better, because you're using terms that you're really familiar with.
Yes.
That not everybody is.
The condensation nuclei is important, but it also, according to the literature, that there is small parts of engine exhaust suit and this and that and aluminum in the condensation nuclei of the jet exhaust. So what I say is, okay, you want to say it's accidental. It's still a polluting crime to have you take out my sky. So we're going to deal with the contrail pollution. All contrails are chemtrails because they form on the chemicals in the jet exhaust. So, and it wouldn't matter if it was just one plane, but we've got day in, day out, flight in, flight out, plus whatever else they're weaving into the fabric of that in the plausible deniability narrative, which can be every which way. You can't prove that they are, but you can't prove that they aren't either. We can actually prove that they are, because we've got them turning off and on in places when they shouldn't. We've got close-ups of the thing. We've got a lot more pieces to this puzzle now. We know this. But at the end of the day, and unless you go and you say to the FAA, we saw this plane at this time, here is us documenting it, it's not on the flight tracker. What is that plane, and why do you allow planes? There are certain planes that have permission to fly overhead. We need to change laws to help us against that. We need to make laws where we can. We need to say contrail pollution. We know about NASA studies the different reflective properties of the surfaces of the Earth. They're well aware of it. And Jim Lee has shown us that they have contrail suppressing technologies. And in fact, airlines can get credit for fighting global warming if they're issuing it sulfur up high and using the biofuels down low so they don't give cancer to the people on the ground, but then they use sulfur so it's not pollution if it's doubled over as geoengineering, because when industry pollutes, they have to pay. When they repurpose the pollution into a useful thing for us, we have to pay. The bottom line is it's still pollution. So holding them accountable for contrail pollution, because contrail pollution is chemtrail pollution and albedo modification, which is the changing of the reflectivity of the surfaces of the Earth, the albedo, is significant. And in fact, it's highly significant, since this is also how they want to fight global warming, right? By reflecting sunlight off. But they don't talk about the trapping it in and what are the checks and balances of that. But now there's more. Now we're microwaving, and not just HARP in one region, but across the nation, these Dopplers are set up. So you just pulse them different ways and you get the clouds moving in a certain way. You use HARP to get the jet stream to move at the ionospheric level. At the tropospheric level, you have the Doppler radars that are a network that are growing more and more in different countries. You can heat a region over power plants to get the power plants to do more weather. You know, without the power plants even knowing, but we do have patents for weather modification via power plants as well. There's so many ways, and the more disasters there are, the more they integrate the network. The more the network is integrated, the more in the hot water we are, you know. So what I've been doing is just going back. I went back to Tesla, and I discovered he's not the father of HARP, but the father of weaponized Doppler. HARP is another safe one, because I really don't know when they're using HARP. I can see something's going on, but I can't prove it. You know, even people who aren't conspiracy oriented are like, something's up with the weather now, you know, and some people are satisfied with it's global warming. CO2 is doing it all, but I can't really look at the sky and think of CO2 and understand what I'm seeing. Now, I have an event called Putting It All on the Table, because we're unpacking different environmental and epigenetic health issues. So, for instance, we're learning that CO2, if you're worried about CO2, stop using glyphosate, Monsanto's Roundup. It's destroying the microbes in the soil, which is offsetting the CO2 levels. And when you transplant the CO2, the microbes, the good friendly bacteria, back into the soil after Monsanto's done destroying it, you do soil transplants, scientists are finding that within 2 to 3 years, the CO2 levels go back to normal above the land. So we have ship tracks destroying the microbes. Also, the glyphosate is destroying the microbes in our gut, back to the immune system, back to the health. So we in the World War I, we have to end pollution. We have to end pollution, or it's our extinction. The sustainability narrative doesn't include pollution. In fact, what we're finding, like with vaccines, is that there's an inverse, where there are population inversions, where countries are losing populations instead of growing them, they are able to relax their vaccine laws. So the sustainability narrative is a CO2 narrative. The CO2 narrative is a eugenics narrative and a globalist narrative. What we need is a global understanding of some basic scientific facts, and then saying, no, you're not going to be irradiating everything. We're hardwiring this. We have enough radiation going on. We have enough chemical contamination. And if we do need to geoengineer because something's coming onto our planet, then maybe we could talk about it publicly and do it with water vapor instead of aerosols and all the other Morgellons and alien invasion technologies that we're seeing things. It's not in the field of theory anymore. There are alien nanobots we are breathing in right now. This is not my work. This is other people's work. So, and that's a lot. We can't do anything about that. I believe we are all powerful. I believe we are. We hold it. There's so, beyond the veil. We are so veiled, but once that veil is coming out and consciousness is a rising tide, you can't unknow things when you know things. So we are so powerful. They have to work so hard to keep us in the dark, but they have had 100 years of catching up on technology and weaponizing it and putting it in place. And it's in our backyard. It's an incredible story to tell. I know it's unbelievable, but I invite you to check it out. And the thing to do at this point is to stop microwave proliferation, and it's not just 5G, because this was pointed out to me. In Entergy, they're going to take $30 a month off your house if you put solar panels in. But it also comes in with a smart meter that it's tied to, and so they're actually making energy off your thing. So there's going to be more devices on your roof now, and your smart meter, and on the corner, and whatever is being sent into space. We are. You're familiar with the 5G. I mean, you're very well rounded in your research. So it's all tied. The Internet of Things. I mean, this is what Tesla promised, saw for the world, actually, but not in a weaponized way, in a benevolent way. But he made fog so thick he couldn't see his hands in front of him in his Colorado Springs lab in 1899. So we're over 100 years, and he said one day we'll be able to irrigate distant deserts. The sky is electric, and this is what's going on. But it's not in the best interests of mankind. And there's a lot of cover up on the scientific fact that water vapor is significant. And I'm not trying to minimize aerosols or the pollution when I'm saying they can move the water vapor around, and cloud aerosol interaction is significant. So that's very important. And there's a lot of agendas piggybacking on all this technology. So we need to get strong in ourselves and face it and work our magic consciously.
So if it's all these agendas that you're talking about are intentional, and then obviously they wouldn't be just stopped voluntarily.
No.
What do you think a solution would be?
Well, one of the favorite things, I can't remember who said this. Somebody said, oh, what can you do? What can I do about it? And it's like, well, that's a great question. The first solution is, what can you do about it? It's going inside and taking inventory, taking stock of your assets, of your value, of what you have to offer the world. What can you do? Can you write a song about it? Can you open up, first of all, creating a space and allowing this, this information in, sharing information in a creative way, either through, your community or educating your local lawmaker, saying stopping 5G. First of all, stopping 5G is something. Bringing people on board to microwaved weather is really kind of hard to do just out of the back. But once people realize 5G is coming, once they realize it's millimeter wave technology and it goes from 2.4 gigahertz to 300, what is it? Including the lethal range, the 90 gigahertz range where they use it for crowd control, and starts having thermal effects at that point. We really want this technology here. What all can it do? When we understand, all I have to do is educate people on microwaves and weather, right? After that, it's what can you do? Can you talk to your local meteorologist? Are you a local meteorologist? Do you have a friend? What can you do? Meditate, peace, whatever it is, to do something. Now is the time to do it. And we're really, really creative. I just don't have enough time to exercise all the things I think about doing and all the plans I have. But it's fun when people join me and then, or I see people doing things on their neck of the woods, or see what synapses fire in people once they understand this. And at first, you may not be realizing the overlap in your own community, but notice when the clouds are heavy, notice when they raise, and notice when you see billowing clouds in the horizon. Try to learn where your power plants are around you and see if they infuse that. But look at the Doppler radar. See it when it blooms out, how there's no clouds, and when it comes down, can you see it interacting? Can you catch it? I don't know. There's probably 1,000,001 things I couldn't think of right now that you could do. And the number one thing that's stolen from us, the bottom line, is that it's our own creativity and ability to imagine has been stolen from us. And the mind, I say, is the center point of this figure 8 of eternity. Between the creator and the creation is the mind, which is the balance point between source and manifestation, and it's the projector. So it's not about doom and gloom, it's about reality check. Doom and gloom is not when you embrace reality. Doom and gloom is when you think you're powerless to do anything about it. So don't deny what is. Deny its power over you. Accept your mortality and rejoice in the life you have today, and do what it takes. Be brave and fearless in extending the joys of this world to the next generation, because when we realize that we're all one and connected, of course, we want to share the gift of the gifts of life with others around us, and respect and work within nature. It really is a war of the synthetic versus the organic. And there is cutting edge research. I recommend everybody look up Sterling Hill. But we're finding out, and I just heard it one time, so I'm not going to do the science justice. I sometimes have to regurgitate, I study things to commit them to memory or to understand them, because I don't commit things to memory I don't understand. But ultimately, we know that the glyphosate is replacing the glycine in our bodies, which helps us detox and things like that, and it's actually replacing the glycine in our bodies. And there's a couple things that are being replaced right now, And it's basically carbon is being replaced by silica, or literally by these synthetic organisms. So, so I go all over the place. So sometimes I'm not sure where I'm bringing it home to, but it is very, it's all very relevant. Yeah, what can we do? Right. You're doing a radio show, and I'm sure you do other things. You're telling me some of the things you do, as far as on a spiritual level.
Well, it seems like one of the things as a bottom line is that people could keep up with your frequent posts on all your media channels, right?
Yeah.
And as things develop and you get more insights in what can be done about the whole situation, they can follow it there.
Yeah, we have a lot of things in the works. We've got a creative group of people, and we're going to be calling on. We're going to be calling on people we call on people to join us. But ultimately, the first thing you want to do is stop 5G and high frequency proliferation in your area, because once that gets entrenched, that's the Internet of Things, and that's the control grid. That's the bottom line. We have to stop that. We just have to. Yeah. And holding it, unfortunately, we have to fight. The battle is at the FCC level, and it's also at the local level. So people are beating back, some of it, slowing it down, holding it accountable. Accountability, there's also other ways. We have to make victories where we can. So even if we can't stop it, there's no reason why these things can't read how much energy they're putting off, right? I mean, they're smart, right? So they should be able to tell me how much frequency they're exposing me to at any given time, documenting that. And there should be a user-friendly interactive map that keeps track of all the high frequency radio devices around that are putting out, emitting, so that I can see how much I'm exposed to in any given field.
Right. I'm sure that technology exists already. Motivation to give it to the public would not be very high.
No, no one's giving us anything. We have to just get that out of our language.
Well,
it's not going to be given to us.
I mean, I'm not saying it wouldn't be demanded by people. It just it doesn't mean that the demand would be honored.
Right.
But it could be made.
Yes, and the people could then. I mean, it would have to be honored if the people really made it, though. That's the thing. I don't agree with that. If the people made it, it would be honored.
Why would they have to honor it?
Because the people have power. That's why they try to keep us separated and divided, because they don't want us coming together. But if we ever came together like the Europeans, like the yellow vesters aren't fighting each other for the most part.
Right. Yeah.
They know who the enemy is.
Right.
What's that? But we're fighting each other, left, right, Trump, Clinton, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, more coherence and less everybody fighting over every detail would be good.
I think if we realize that our issues first are clean air, clean food, clean water, we have nothing else after that, and the sovereign right to choose our medicine or our right to life, that if we focus on that, all the other issues, I mean, basic human rights, I don't care about identity politics, I don't care about women's rights, don't need it. I have human rights, and that's what I need. So, I mean, sure, I'm a woman, I have individual needs, and the kids have individual needs, but we're all humans. And then you can go into sentient life if you want to add animals into that, or at least, I think we need to, whether we consume them or not. We've got some other problems too in the environment. I don't know if we want to unpack everything, but prions are a problem coming up too. We need a shift in consciousness more than any. I believe when the consciousness shifts, poof, everything will sort out. We have so much brilliance amongst humanity, and so many people with solutions that have been suppressed. We know that. There's so many more we don't know of. And when we all come to the table without the censorship and the divide, boy, what won't we be able to get done? Right. But right now it's industry who's controlling the narrative, but we can't let them control our minds. So the first thing we need to do is tap into our courage, our self, our inner voice, to sort through the lies, to see what's really important, to quiet the distractions, and to focus on what's important, take care of ourselves or our family, face these laws where the rubber meets the road. So right now the 5G battle is in everybody's backyard. Some people it's too late for the first round, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. And it matters. And I believe there I believe we have allies that are rooting, not just rooting for us, but assisting us. We have benevolent beings that are on our side. So no act, no matter how small, is being ignored right now. So any act of courage, if you're scared to speak out among, and also pick your battles. You may not have to wake up your family if they're your support system to go out into an area that's less risky for you to turn into a tumultuous. The critical mass is all we need, because when we have a critical mass, then the rest will follow. So the critical mass needs to realize what's going on, need to realize the priorities is health and environment. And once we get enough people also understanding that past the, that's a conspiracy theory, censorship fail, people are going to want to do what's right. There's just there's a tremendous amount of hypnosis, but the lies are not maintaining themselves, because that's a house of cards that's imploding. So there's a lot of opportunity right now to take the people whose disillusionment has shattered them a little bit on the side of the road as their health or their finances or their dreams kind of get a reality check, and explain to them what they can do to heal themselves, to then, when you heal yourself, then you can start healing your community and others. So there's a lot of healing that needs to go on. The first thing is consciousness. So
Looking at everything you've covered, which is, really about 6 hours worth of stuff at least, I would say. What do you want people to remember from all that as they look through it repeatedly, which they can do with this recorded version?
Yeah, with my
what do you want them to come away remembering as the bottom line that is the basis of everything else?
Twofold, okay? Because my personal work on this earth right now is bringing forth just this realization of our hydrological cycle is hacked and hijacked, and it's on a daily basis, and it's worldwide, and it's solidifying. So the battle begins within, ultimately. I'm not doing the weather, right? I'm not sacrificing baby in satanic ritual, ceremonies or anything like that. I'm not responsible for that, but I do have to face the discomfort of the truths, and face my own mortality, and get okay with it, and find my peace again, and put on my big girl panties and go out there and just face it in whatever way that is, and whatever. Ultimately, I want people to know how powerful they are, because we wouldn't have survived all of that has been done to us if we weren't, first of all. But there's more than chemtrails to the climate engineering narrative. That's my one message. That's the technical part.
Okay.
Stop 5G, because that's the back end. That's the nail in the coffin on the grid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's these are weaponized levels of, and they have weather effects. But I think the weather effects are going to be the least of our troubles with 5G. The health effects are cumulative. So there are things we can do. So look into EMF protection, and negative ions help fight the positive ions. And do the research. Find some people right now are galvanizing to prep for. There's serious prepping going on. Serious prepping groups going hardcore prepping, getting ready for things to go down in the next couple of years. So you can there's no plan in place for your family. The government doesn't have any. FEMA camps, you don't want to end up in one of those. There's really no plan for. There's plans. The elite have a plan. They have a plan. We don't. So we have to take care of ourselves. So the more we understand, we can get ready physically. We have to also be ready spiritually to just. It takes a lot to get out of the rat race and enter a world. There's a way to walk both worlds. We have to. I have to pay my rent, right? I have to. I have a child. I have to get to school. I got play dates with the parents. I can't talk to them about weaponized weather if they're not open to it. I do have to play in this world, but I can plant seeds. With vaccines, I'm a pretty hardcore person personally, but that's a choice that I was able to make. But I plant seeds where I can. Also, mandatory vaccines are coming down the pipeline. Yeah, and not, yeah, this is a lot of stuff. So don't give away your sovereign power to anything. I spent some time in a therapist's office one time after a breakup, and I was like, kept asking my therapist, I don't know what I think about this. I don't know what I think about that. And she's like, well, what do you think? What is it? What do you feel? I'm like, if I knew, I wouldn't be here in your office. What? And and then I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, why don't I know what I think about something? It's like, because I'm not paying attention to how I feel. And how I feel is an indicator that something is wrong, either in the world or in my thinking. So if it's in the world, I got to change it. If it's in my thinking, I got to change that. Sometimes it's in the world and you can't change the world and you got to change your thinking. But does it mean that you accept bad as good? No. You don't have to go the other way and accept bad as good in order to change your thinking. But maybe you think of one thing I learned, okay, there's this movie. And I had a client, I'm a massage therapist, I had a client who studied with Eckhart Tolle. And I was trying to tell him about the 5G, and because he mentioned the fact, I'm like, oh, 5G's going to kill him. And I was like, you know, it's you kind of have to let go of desiring to control the outcome when you're asking people for help. And I'm like, but the children are going to die. I was like, maybe the children are going to die, but that's all the more reason why you need to stop controlling the outcome. And I chewed on that for a second, and then I saw the movie Boss Baby, because my kid watches these Netflix movies sometimes. And Boss Baby is like this boss of the baby factory, but he gets incarnated in this kid, his family, and but he sometimes regresses to baby. And anyways, at the end of it, the bad guys and all that, and he ends up on a rocket, and his older brother, who knows he's the boss baby from on a mission, but now the boss baby has regressed into baby mode, and he's on a rocket or a dynamite or something that's going to explode. And he's telling the baby, jump, jump. And the baby just won't jump. And because the baby's scared of him, because he's yelling at him to jump, you know, and he just like has to relax, even though everything is at stake, even though the baby's about to blow up, and he has to sing him a lullaby and bring him down that way, cajole him down. And it's kind of like there's such a sense of urgency, and we have to like let go of needing to like control the outcome, and just breathe and do what's right, and not worry about it's impossible or I can't deal with it, or get grounded in ourselves and see what needs to be done and do it.
Okay. Well, the only thing I would add to that is just to remind people of where they can get your book, and then you've given them a lot to think about, and let's see what happens after that. So where do they get the book?
Yeah, it's Funny Clouds, a Chemtrail Tale, and it can be found on Amazon. I'm sorry about that, but that's just the way it is.
It's okay.
It's a wonderful tool. It does break down the issue very simply and addresses the plight that we're actually in, you know, to cook it down, like who are these guys? It's industry think tanks that have just been trying to close down on all the aspects that serve man, including the aspects of man. And gosh, I'm not bored. Are you?
No. And you talk about a lot of that on your site, weathertruth.org, right? And on the continuing...
Weathertruth.org is redirecting right now, but it brings you to the playlist World of Hot Water, and we'll be developing.
Good. So they can see the videos.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for the concentrated download of all that stuff. I appreciate it. I know you're in the middle of a lot of things, but let's see what happens next, and let more people know about this, and then we'll talk to you shortly after that.
Yeah, I'll share another story though, if for effective activism, because I'm learning from my mistakes. If y'all want to, also, I got my local meteorologist who for a year was saying chemtrails. It's just when there's when vapor aloft, and then the hot exhaust comes, and then it makes a contrail. Blah blah blah. You know, we hear it in the debunker sites, and I couldn't get her off of that, and she was such a smug. And finally, after a year, I come back to her. I said, okay, can you please tell me what allows for a contrail to persist versus the conditions that allow it, what are the conditions that allow a contrail to form versus the conditions that allow a contrail to persist? And she said, well, when the airloft is colder than the exhaust, it'll create a contrail, and when it's warmer, it'll persist. And she was busy trying to dismiss me and hung up. And did you catch that? When will the airloft ever be hotter than an exhaust?
Yeah, that would be an uncomfortable weather situation for sure.
That would be a seriously uncomfortable weather situation. We'd have other problems besides chemtrails.
Yeah.
And
basically, she's saying she either doesn't know or won't tell you.
Well, it's what she said is she doesn't know. And I actually didn't assume that. I went to her in an email and I said, would you care to clarify, ma'am? And these are the words you left me with. Think about them. And she says, well, you obviously know more about this than I do. I said, so you see, we can split hairs on chemtrails or contrails, the linguistic thing, but the thing is we have a contrail pollution problem, which is causing albedo modification. And she said, you know what? You're right. I want to run a story on this in October when the contrails form again. And I said, that's wonderful. And meanwhile, I was speaking to the National Weather Service that she had introduced me to. And I asked them, hey, whose job is it to tell us about these artificial jet cirrus when my blue skies get taken away by jet cirrus? Whose job is it to notify me that the clouds are artificial? Not ours. Is it some NOAAs? No, not NOAA is not obligated to report to the World Meteorological Organization. I was like, so who's and I was in the right? I was in the right. And then I started asking her about Doppler radar, but I got cocky, and I lost the story with Margaret Orr because she was in communication with the National Weather Service because I was not a good sport with the National Weather Service. I was like a bull in a china shop, and there are people, there are egos, there are careers, there's people don't have the time to do the whole research, and you can only, you have to be aware of your environment, you have to push where you can, you have to be remember that there's a human being who may not be in on it, or who may or may not be in on it. Even if you're talking to the devil likes to be respected. So, and take what you want out of that. He who has ears, let him listen.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Raphaelle. That was a massive overview of a lot of things, and let's see what people feel about it, and we'll stay in touch.
Okay. Thank you so much. Please, any debunks are welcome.
And
or further insights.
Don't hang up, and we'll say goodbye in the break here.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys, along with me, you got to meet NOLA Butterfly, which is Raphaelle O'Neill. And I think the best thing about that is she's giving an example of somebody who actually cares about the future of humanity, which I respect greatly. And she's trying to put together all the overwhelming collection of stuff that she's finding out about and do the most good with it. She's mentioned the site weathertruth.org, that is currently apparently redirecting to her YouTube channel, NOLA Butterfly on YouTube. And you can keep up with her there. Her book is Funny Clouds, a Chemtrail Tale for Kids. I have not read it myself. I just found out about Raphaelle recently, but she said it's on Amazon for sale. And apparently there's a PDF version you can read and maybe hear, but the one that is for sale will help her work. And I'm going to be learning more about her along with you. Remember, excuse me, remember that if you can't find us on major social media platforms as they get tighter and tighter, you can find us on Brighteon.com. That's Brighteon, brighteon.com/channel/Lost Arts Radio. And that's started by our friend Mike. He's not going to be censoring. And you can keep up with us at lostartsradio.com and also see our support channel if you feel like supporting our work at subscribestar.com/lostartsradio. And we're working on a bunch of very interesting work right now that is going to be related to the school that we've talked about from time to time before as an ultimate project for our nonprofit. And you can stay in touch with us and find out more about what happens with that there may be some major campaigns starting in the near future. I've got meetings today on that subject, so we'll let you know what happens, and keep doing the regular public videos during the week as much as we can. Watch for those on all of our major channels. Remember, on brighteon.com/channel/Lost Arts Radio, bookmark that or somehow make it memorable for you. It's going to be subject to subscribing soon, according to Mike, so keep an eye on that. And then Planetary Healing Club is a group that's on the private platform that is working on some of the deeper stuff from research base and things that you can do yourself for your own health and life situations. No medical advice, obviously, but a lot deeper stuff than that, and sharing information. If you want to check that out, that's planetaryhealingclub.com, and I'm there live myself every week. It's a really different experience. It's I'll talk for a while, sharing things from my own work that are not on the public channels, and then we'll have the rest of it interactive time on live chat for as long as we need to. Anyway, it'd be nice to see you there if you're interested. Otherwise, watch for us again on the next Sunday show, and hope you have a great week, and I'll see you then. Thank you.